Hello, everybody. Fantastic to see you all here. Welcome to our webinar this evening, Fighting for Fertility Equality, with Marta Jansa Perez, who is the Director of Embryology here at BPAS Fertility. And we're delighted to welcome Whitney and Megan Bacon-Evans, who are influencers, campaigners, and currently on a fertility journey themselves. So my name is Olivia Marshall. I work in the External Affairs team here at BPAS, and I'm also really pleased that my colleague Rachel Clark is here tonight helping with the technical stuff, so huge thanks to Rachel. For those of you who don't know much about BPAS as an organisation, we're a reproductive healthcare charity that was formed in 1968, originally as the Birmingham Pregnancy Advisory Service. And in 2020, we announced our plans to launch the UK's first not-for-profit IVF service later in 2021. At BPAS, we believe that all those who are clinically eligible should be able to access the 3 NHS-funded cycles of IVF that's recommended by the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, or NICE, and we will campaign to achieve this. But if people do need to self-fund their own care, they should be able to access high-quality, evidence-based fertility treatment at not-for-profit prices. We've consulted a wide range of stakeholders to inform the development of our service, and our aim is to provide ethical, evidence-based, person-centred care that supports patients on what we know can often be a really difficult journey. We intend to only charge what it costs to provide a safe, high quality and accessible service to patients. Alongside this, we will of course continue to campaign for equitable access to fertility care on the NHS. We're aware that there's a postcode lottery and some groups of patients are sadly worse affected by this than others. So this week, BPAS Fertility published a report of some research that we've done about access to NHS fertility care for female same-sex couples. Sadly, we found that many local NHS bodies, or CCGs, impose restrictions and extra financial burdens on patients that disproportionately affect female same-sex couples, which amount to a tax on LGBTQ+ would-be parents. In her presentation, Marta Jansa Perez will tell you a bit more about what we found in that research. So tonight's webinar, Fighting for Fertility Equality, is the third in our series so far. If you missed the last one, Exploring Embryology, there's a recording available online. You can access that via our social media channels. We're also running these webinars to provide information and support for all fertility patients who might be looking to have care with us at BPAS Fertility, but also if you're a patient having care on the NHS or with a private provider. We're always really keen to hear what topics you'd like to discuss next. So please do feel free to make a suggestion in the Q&A box below, or you can email us fertility@bpas.org. So the structure of tonight's event will be, we will begin with the 2 presentations. Marta Jansa Perez will go first, and then we'll hear from Whitney and Megan about their own experience. We'll then move on to a Q&A, so if you have a question, please do put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. This event is also being recorded, so we can make it available to people who weren't able to attend tonight. So we'll get started with our first presentation from Marta. Marta joined BPAS as Director of Embryology in January 2020 to lead on the development of our new service from scratch. She's worked in clinical embryology and fertility service delivery for almost 20 years, and during that time she's gained a lot of experience providing care to LGBTQ+ patients and lots of different family formations. And as a former fertility patient herself, Marta's passionate about honest fertility service provision and believes that patients' understanding of the clinical process is key to success in service delivery. So over to Marta.
Thanks, Olivia. I will try to share my screen. Hold on. Go to the first slide. That makes sense, right? Can everyone see that? Is that visible to all?
Yes. Thanks.
Yes. Perfect. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Olivia, for the lovely introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight. And I must say it's a pleasure and a privilege to be here with Whitney and Megan, supporting them in the work they're doing, fighting for equality themselves as well in terms of accessing fertility treatment. As Olivia was talking, I came to realize that in fact I've been working in fertility for 23 years now. So that must be that I started before many of you here were born, but I still love the field, and as Olivia said, it's something that I feel very passionate about, and I really very strongly believe that everyone should have the right to access treatment, to form the type of family that they want to form. It's a human right for people to have children if they so choose to have them, and at the time they do want to have them. So I very much support any initiative that will sort of fight for that sort of access to equal treatment. Today I'm going to talk first about the data that Olivia has already mentioned, and this is data that Olivia has worked on and put together about the situation with funding for LGBT+ women. And lots of you in the audience will be familiar with the inequality in funding, specifically for this group of people. In the second part of the presentation, I'll talk about routes to parenthood and how people can achieve having children in this specific group. So if we start with the NICE guidance, which Olivia has already mentioned, it says in here that people in same-sex relationships should be offered intrauterine insemination as a first course of treatment. Now, of course, lots of us know that between what the NICE guidelines say and what CCGs fund, there is a huge difference, unfortunately. So even though the NICE guidelines will stipulate that, the situation with funding is very different. And what we have found is that there is huge inequalities across all of the country. So if you live in Scotland, the NHS will fund 6 to 8 cycles of artificial insemination. Whereas in Northern Ireland, you need to fund 4 of those first yourself in order to access then NHS-funded intrauterine insemination. So that again, it's a bit of an extra burden that people need to self-fund in order to access NHS treatment. And in Wales, it's the best place to live because you can have 6 cycles funded by the NHS, but that also includes the donor sperm, and that's a bit of a hidden cost of treatment, the cost of donor sperm. If you have to buy donor sperm from a donor sperm bank, you will have to spend quite a significant amount of money over and above the cost of treatment. In England, as we know, it's a complete postcode lottery, and it depends on where you live that you will have more or less funding or none at all. And that's the information that we have been collecting in the last few months. And what we found is that in 76% of the CCGs, you need to have at least 3 self-funded cycles of intrauterine insemination before you can access NHS-funded treatment. And only 16% of the CCGs will have no requirement for self-funding in order to access NHS treatment. And that's really very sad and very low. Intrauterine insemination can cost quite a lot of money, up to £1,600 per cycle. If you add that up with the cost of donor sperm, and if you add that up to the number of cycles that you might end up having, you could spend quite a lot of money in order to have a real chance for a pregnancy. And we know that 29 CCGs require between 10 and 12 cycles before people can access fertility, NHS-funded fertility treatment. So that could be, over £20,000. And the other difficulty is that even though some people might choose to do home insemination, which is a very reasonable choice, that is often not recognized by the CCGs as one of the cycles leading to NHS-funded treatment. So that again, it's something that is quite unfair because this is a way to attempt a pregnancy that should be recognized as one of the cycles. So further on funding, we know that there are 3 CCGs that do not fund at all any treatment with donor gametes for any patient group for that matter. And a lot of the CCGs do not fund the cost of donor sperm. I've already explained that donor sperm is one of the hidden costs of this sort of fertility treatment, because it's difficult to decide how much donor sperm to buy. You don't know how many cycles of treatment you might need in order to get pregnant. But also it is worth thinking about sibling sperm. So if you're going to buy donor sperm for one child, you might want to buy enough to reserve that donor to have second child. So you might end up buying quite a lot of donor sperm with the uncertainty of whether you need it all at all, whether you need it all or not. And that is, as I say, a significant amount of money. Olivia has already said what we do. We're campaigning for an end of the postcode lottery, and we also campaign to highlight how discriminatory the funding can be in a lot of the CCGs, and it produces additional burdens to LBT women, as we have seen. And from the end of this year, we have the pleasure of being able to offer fertility treatment, and that includes IUI and IVF for everyone who requires it. And that will be at a not-for-profit basis, which means we will be able to undercut the prices that people are asking for in the private sector. And what we want to do is to make it completely patient-centered. And so we will be supporting people in their choices throughout treatment as they wish to carry on or not, or move into further types of treatment. So I'm just going to explain the clinical pathways that people can undertake in order to achieve a pregnancy. We've already spoken about artificial insemination. So if you do it at home, that needs to be done with a known donor, because donor sperm banks will not deliver sperm to any other than HFEA licensed clinics. So home insemination can only be done with a known donor and using fresh sperm. If people choose to have treatment at a clinic, then it's done by intrauterine insemination, which is when washed sperm is inserted directly in the uterine cavity. And that can be only done with donor sperm that has been frozen and quarantined. And I will explain a bit more about that later. Now, of course, we know that if people are unsuccessful with this type of treatment, or if there is any indication as to why they should not attempt it, like if there's tubal blockage or any other indication, the next course of treatment is IVF or ICSI. And that, of course, can be done with donor sperm. And what happens with donor sperm is, because it's frozen, the one we use at clinics, often it doesn't survive the freezing and thawing process as good as we would expect. And if the preparation on the day of egg collection is below a certain threshold, people might suggest to do ICSI, and that stands for intracytoplasmic sperm injection. And this is when we inject a single sperm into each mature egg. Now, if that's not NHS funded treatment, most of the providers, I would say, will charge extra money for that. So it's something that people should be aware of when they embark on IVF treatment, that there are occasions when on the day of egg collection, they get faced with that extra cost and basically no choice, because they are told that if we attempt IVF, the chance of fertilization might be significantly reduced. So it's worth keeping that in mind. I thought that should mention the concept of shared parenthood, which lots of you might be familiar with. This used to be called reciprocal egg donation by the HFEA, but they've now changed it to shared parenthood. And this is where one of the women in the couple uses her eggs for treatment, and it's the other woman that will carry the pregnancy. And that is, of course, if one of them produces eggs and the other one has a uterine cavity. But in some cases, if none of the people in the couple has a uterus, they might need surrogacy for treatment. And that might be in cases where it's two trans women having treatment, in that case, surrogacy is the only route to parenthood. And whilst I talk about trans people, I thought I should mention that it is worth very much so considering fertility preservation before people transition, because that will allow them to have genetically related children later on. And for women that end up having lesbian relationship, if one of them has transitioned, we can then produce embryos using the sperm of one of them and the eggs of the other, and they can in that way have a genetically related child. So it's something that it's very much worth considering, because it will give people options further down the line. I'm going to quickly talk about donor sperm and what options there are. I've already mentioned known and unknown donor, and fresh and frozen. So fresh sperm can only be used at home and with a known donor, and fertility clinics can only use frozen sperm. The differences are very significant in terms of the screening process that the donors will go. If you're using fresh sperm, there is no need for screening. There are no legal requirements. It's someone that you know, but we would strongly advise for these donors to have a sperm analysis, because what people don't want to do is to be trying for months to get pregnant with a known donor, only to find out later on down the line that they have no sperm in the ejaculate, or that the sperm quality is very low, and therefore the chances of pregnancy with intrauterine insemination would also be jeopardized. So it's advisable to have a sperm analysis straight away, but also testing for STIs, because the risk of self-inseminating with fresh donor sperm, if the donor carries any sexually transmitted infections, are quite high. So it's worth to have that test just for reassurance. If we're using frozen sperm at clinics, the advantage of that is that donors are very thoroughly tested, not just for STIs, but also for genetic conditions, for bacterial infections, but also they have a thorough medical history being taken. And that means we make sure that they are healthy and that there's nothing in their family history that would make us worry about any genetic conditions that might be passed down the line. But also what's important is that we will freeze that sperm and quarantine it for between 3 to 6 months, and then test the donor again. And that gives us a risk of very close to zero that the samples of sperm that we have in storage will carry any sexually transmitted diseases. So it is in that sense a safer approach to treatment in terms of the chances of conceiving a child that might be affected by any genetic conditions, but also the chances of the transmission of any infection to the recipient. The legal aspects are also quite complex. So if you're using a sperm donor through a clinic, children that are conceived as a result of that donation can access non-identifying information of the donor at the age of 16, but also at the age of 18, they can access identifying information of the donor and can actually contact the donor. And that is as per law, and it's an HFEA regulation. And even though the donor has no legal rights or obligations towards those children, they need to be prepared to be contacted and have contact with those children. But also, donors have the legal right to withdraw their consent to the use of their sperm at any point before the insemination. And that is important to keep in mind, because occasionally it happens. And even at the point where there are frozen embryos in storage, the donor has that right to say, I don't want the recipient to use those embryos for their treatment. And those would have to be disposed of after a 1-year cooling off period. So it doesn't happen often, but it's worth considering that those rights are with the donor up to the point where treatment is undertaken. And I will finish by talking about legal parenthood. So if you're doing home insemination, the person that gives birth is automatically classed as the legal parent, but the donor might be classified as the legal father. So it's worth keeping that in mind when you're using a friend or a family member, because things can change later on down the line. If you're doing treatment in a licensed clinic, the advantage there in terms of legal parenthood is that both partners can sign consents that mean that they both registered immediately at birth as the legal parents of the child that is born. And that gives people a lot of reassurance in the sense that they are, from the beginning, legal parents recognized of those children. And I'm just going to finish by supporting Whitney and Megan's petition. There is the link there for anyone to click in and to support them, and to just remind people to follow us on social media. We will give people updates on what we're up to in terms of advocacy and campaigning, and also on the development of our service. And I'll stop sharing my screen and back to Olivia. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marta. That was a really interesting overview of all of the different clinical paths to parenthood for different family formations, but also some of the challenges that they can face. So that was really interesting. Thank you. Just a reminder to everyone listening in, I can see that we have got some questions coming through already, so please keep them coming, and I really look forward to answering those later in the session. Our next speakers, I'm delighted to say, are Whitney and Megan Bacon-Evans, who are online influencers. They're travel and lifestyle bloggers. Whitney and Megan have been together since 2008, and after navigating several years of a very long distance relationship, they got their civil partnership in 2012. They were the first lesbian couple to appear on the TV series Say Yes to the Dress, and they've also been featured in The Guardian, Cosmopolitan, The Times, Marie Claire, on the BBC, many more. They were also listed at number 24 in Diva magazine's top 100 Diva Power list. More recently, Whitney and Megan have embarked upon their own fertility journey, and sadly have experienced firsthand some of the unfair policies that are imposed by local NHS bodies. They have used their platform to speak out about this and to start a petition, as Marta has already mentioned. And today they're going to tell us a little bit more about their journey so far and where they're at the moment. So over to you, Whitney and Megan.
Hello, I'm Megan.
And I'm Whitney.
So just to let you know, Whitney is American, so that might help you out as to remember who is who. That was a great introduction. Thank you so much, Olivia. That was amazing. Like, yeah, you know all the facts.
I know, like, best intro ever. And Marta, that was such a brilliant presentation. It was so intriguing and so well laid out. It was very good to read.
Yes, thank you so much for that information, because that is amazing, because we have been on this journey since the beginning of last year, and that's kind of everything that we found out along the way. So if anyone's tuning in now and this is the first they're hearing, then they've got a great start to know everything they need to know right now. So yeah, we'll give you a little background about us. So yeah, we've been together nearly 13 years.
I mean, where does the time go?
Whitney actually used to live in Hawaii.
I did.
Yeah, now I live here. But...
yeah, I mean, it's a long story, but to make it short, I found Megan on MySpace back in 2006 by randomly putting in a British postcode, and she just so happened to be on the first page. So I always say one click changed my life, and it's a real divine intervention that we're here. So fast forward to where we are now. We're going on 13 years of being together. And we got married in 2017.
Yes, civil partnership in 2012, and then we upgraded to a marriage on the same date, so anniversary in 2017. So, you know, had to have two. And we always wanted kids. We always spoke about it pretty much in the beginning, like over a decade ago. We'd already even decided on, you know, hopefully the names of our future children, and we're still sticking to those for now, so we'll see. It'd always been a plan, but we just weren't obviously like ready yet, and we wanted to wait until the right time. As Olivia said, we were travel bloggers, so actually like 2019 we were traveling like every single month. How many countries? Like
13 countries, and it was just getting a little much, so we said in 2020 we're gonna take a break and travel less. Little did we know we would not be traveling any because of COVID, but you know, everything happens for a reason, which was a good opportunity to let us kind of think about the next steps in expanding our family. And we started researching, and it's when we really just like, you know, set the wheels in motion, if you will. And it all started when we collabed with this amazing company called Mosey Baby, based in the US. It's essentially a home insemination kit. I mean, take the turkey baster, but it's remastered and remodeled, and it is
redesigned
and it is snazzy. We were so excited to be collabing with them because it really just piqued our interest and curiosity of we started looking at donors, and we were like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, instantly we thought we don't have to have a clinical setting. We can be in the comfort of our home and just like have that moment to ourselves, and at least give it a couple of goes.
Mm-hmm.
And then to our demise, we found out that, you know, as Marta said, sperm coming from a sperm bank cannot be shipped to the home. That was banned.
Home
Home insemination, yes. When we found that out, Megan actually rang the fertility clinic, and she was like, hello, is there any way I can just like pick it up and, you know, bring it home?
Yeah, I was like, if it gets shipped to you, then I can just take it home. Yeah.
They're like, no, it doesn't work like that. So that was really the first obstacle that we found in our journey, and that's essentially what kicked everything off, wasn't it? The campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like this rabbit hole we fell into, and then we shared our story and what we were going through to our followers, and we had just a massive pour in from people who were experiencing, you know, the same things. So then and there, it made us realize like this issue is massive,
mm-hmm.
and something just has to be done. I mean, it's 2020, well, 2020 then, and 2021 now.
Yeah, exactly.
So we thought to ourselves, how can this still be happening? I mean, in 2014, gay marriage came in, so you would think in the eyes of the law we're all equal, but no, we found that not to be entirely true.
Our families are not equal, sadly. So we discovered along the way that we had to go to fertility clinics. There was no other option. We're basically being effectively forced to go there because we always knew we wanted to use sperm from a sperm bank. There isn't anyone we know that we'd like to use their sperm, or do we want that risk as well, really? So yeah, sperm donor was always the way forward. And then obviously we're like, okay, fine, we have to go to a clinic. And then it wasn't until that we started looking into it that we found out the different levels and what the CCGs require for same-sex couples, and we couldn't even find out the information for our local CCG as to how many rounds. Olivia very kindly did a freedom of information request for us in order to get the information that it is 6 rounds of IUI that they require, in order for them to the NHS to help with, say, IVF, and it's 1 round of IVF for our area. And my sister, who is heterosexual, had also gone through IVF, so we were already aware of like the journey of IVF as such, but also the requirements that are put on heterosexual couples as opposed to same-sex couples. So for straight couples, essentially it is 2 years of unprotected sex
at no financial cost.
Yeah, so whilst it might be a long time, there's no financial cost essentially, but also there's no evidence required. And
yes, I mean, how do you measure 2 years? Is it once a year?
It doesn't actually say how many times they should actually try to conceive in 2 years either. It's just the length of time. But we do know people can just go and say, oh, I've been trying for 2 years. And then they go, okay, fine, we'll give you some help. So when we then were like, wait a minute, there's that, which is essentially free, compared to same-sex couples who are being forced to pay thousands. Like, I can't believe there are actually some areas that are 10 to 12 rounds of IUI, because like Marta said, yes, it might be 20k say just for the IUI, but to put it in perspective, we've already purchased our donor sperm and it's about £1,000 or more per 1 vial, which is 0.5 milliliters of sperm, which is tiny, and that's like one go. So if you're doing at least 6 or 10 to 12, you know, that's thousands in the sperm donor side, let alone having to pay for the treatment.
Also storage fees as well, shipment, all the little hidden costs.
And tests, you might need lots of tests. There are some like mandatory tests that we had to go through, which again was another experience that we didn't quite like, shall we say, because we felt like we're being treated like we're infertile. We're trying to just begin our baby journey as such, and we're already being treated like we're infertile. And I haven't even tried to get pregnant yet, so it's just been a really, really crazy journey. But when we heard from our followers that some of them spent, you know,
up to
100,000, and still received no help or kind of stuck. We've got others who know they have like infertility issues such as polycystic ovaries, and they were told by the doctor if you were straight then you would get help in the NHS, but because you're not, you're going to have to self-fund 6 rounds, and it's like, what? How does that make any sense? And then equally we heard from people who can't obviously afford the cost of sperm donors and the cost of fertility treatments at the clinic, that they find donors online instead.
Yes, we've we've heard from people who have unfortunately kind of linked to like Facebook groups, hoping to, you know, find these groups where men will, you know, kindly donate their services. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are some good men out there. Like, I'm not speaking on behalf of all of them, but there are some who are really preying on these women's vulnerabilities. They know that they're at the end of their tether. All they want is to rightfully have a child, and they take advantage sometimes, massively, actually. And we've heard from fertility doctors as well that sometimes these women are essentially just raped, which is horrendous. And they're not medically screened, and even if you have a contract drawn up, it's not going to hold up in a court of law either. So it's forcing these women to go down these routes. I mean, we should be better looked after by by our government, and it is very sad. And I mean, we could start by lifting the ban on home insemination from sperm banks. I mean, that would solve a lot of issues there and then, wouldn't it?
That changed because of the law around donors being anonymous, but as a married couple, we are already protected as both the parents anyway.
Exactly.
And there can clearly be a legal thing in place that will document that you purchased the sperm.
Well,
so
exactly.
Personally, we don't see what the issue is there. So for all those many reasons, we decided that something had to be done about it, and November last year we launched our petition. So it's change.org/fertility equality, and we're nearly at 6,000 signatures. So please do go and sign it and share it and make all your friends and family really aware of it.
And once it hits 10,000, we can then legally take it to government with that, and at least start to have a conversation. So yes, please do help us reach that number. That would be wonderful.
And then what we also wanted to talk to you about was our journey for picking our sperm donor.
Yeah,
because that was an interesting one as well.
That was an experience. Well, because
obviously we started in the UK looking at sperm banks, and we quickly realised that you don't get given as much information as we wanted. For example, you couldn't see any baby photos or adult photos.
I mean, just a photo in general would be a good start.
Yeah, just any photo. You just went on obviously description, blue eyes, whatever, and then obviously some medical background information. But it is literally it could be an Excel spreadsheet, just looking at it that will do. No.
And this is one of the biggest decisions you're making, in your life. What the genes your child's going to mix with, and not to even see a picture was just a bit daunting,
and for us, and we know a lot of same-sex couples are the same. They want to find a donor that will resemble either the other partner, depending on how they're going to be carrying, or for us, we wanted a mixture that would kind of have both our features. Obviously, no guarantee as to what the child might look like when they're born.
Same donor sperm, so they will be biologically
but we
related,
want to use the same sperm donor. So like Marta said, we had to think about how many vials do we want. At the moment, I think we've purchased 5, which we know could very quickly go. So we advise anyone who has purchased sperm or looking to just keep an eye on your sperm donor. They often will give you a count as to how many vials are left, and you can also probably ask the clinic if that sperm donor is going to come back in and donate. Because over Christmas I had a panic because I did check. I hadn't looked for half a year, and it was all gone. I was like, no. But luckily I did contact the clinic, or the sperm bank, and they said that he was coming back in. It's all good. So yeah, but equally he may never return, so you just got to be aware of that. So
counting our blessings, we've got 5 vials thus far.
Exactly.
But we had once we found the sperm bank that we wanted to go with, which is Cryos International, and they're based in Denmark. They are wonderful. We highly recommend them. And the experience was just incredible, wasn't it? The information you get was none other. We not only got to see a baby photo of them, there's an option to upgrade to see what they look like as an adult, and I highly recommend getting that feature, because it definitely helps, so you can kind of get an idea of how they may look as an adult as well.
Very different, we found out.
Very different from being a child to an adult. So definitely get those pictures. And not only that, you can hear their voice, which we found to be amazing. And they also write a letter to the child as to why they want to be a donor. And his letter to the child, that's what got us, wasn't it? As well?
Yeah, pretty much sealed the deal.
Sealed the deal.
He really liked him a lot. All his answers,
ticked
his
all the
background,
boxes. Medically screened. You could see everything, and his parents as well. And it was a nice list of everything we would ever want to know. So yeah, it was night and day, wasn't it? How we began.
Exactly, yeah. And I just think it's really nice to have that letter, so that it's in their handwriting as well, so you can print it off and show your future children that this is the sperm donor, because we're going to be
Very transparent.
Very clear from the beginning how they're born, and he's not the father and the sperm donors involved, but we are the mummies. So
a very nice man did mummy's a favor.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to tell the story yet, but it'll be nice to have that letter on it.
And that actually reminds me, it's quite interesting because going through the fertility journey, like I said, we kind of treated like we're infertile, and one of the things that we also had to do was have a mandatory counselling session because we are using donor sperm, which I do understand on one hand, but it kind of seems it's more aimed at like heterosexual couples that probably thought they'd never be in that situation. Whereas for us, we've always known we don't have sperm. So
I can't get
it's not a surprise. So whilst the chat with the counsellor was very nice, and it was all kind of to do with them recommending that you tell the child as soon as possible kind of thing, it still was a little bit like, it was a bit pointless, and it was just weird that we were forced to do that. But other people going through artificial insemination or IVF that aren't using donor sperm or eggs don't have to do that. And it's just like, well,
it's just highlights the whole industry, if you will. It's not catered to same-sex couples whatsoever. The verbiage, the marketing, there's like no imagery of a same-sex couple. It's kind of marketed to be, this is kind of like the end of the road, this is your last option, where for us, this is, we're so excited, like
to be the start of our journey, not the end. Like,
I mean, I just think just across the board, the whole verbiage needs to be completely looked at, and the marketing needs to be a little bit more tailored.
When we signed up to one of our local clinics, we're filling in the information about us, and it said, what is the reason you're coming for these treatments? And the only option I had was to tick was no male partner. I was like, well, that's not my reason for trying to get pregnant. I'm trying to create a family with my wife. So I did pass that feedback on. And it was just things like that were just really disheartening. We went to an open day, for example, and I think we're the only same-sex couple there, but there turned out to be a single woman there. And they didn't cater any of the information to us. There was no mention of donor sperm. And this is back when I thought, well, how do you find donor sperm? I don't understand. Like, what do you do? So we had to find someone afterwards to ask, and they just gave us like,
leaflet.
Yeah, like, oh, here you go. I was like, oh, okay. And that other woman that had been there said, see, Mum,
there was also another single woman there as well, kind of on the same journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, it affects single women as well.
So yeah, we're really excited about BPAS launching their fertility clinic. Not only is it going to be at cost, which is wonderful, but the fact that they are already, so aware and catering towards the LGBTQ plus community. So wonderful. We know that it's going to be a very different experience for anyone going there. So that's just brilliant.
It is amazing, yes. And we also found it really interesting as well, just when we were trying to get any information, we phoned up our local GP, didn't we? And I mean, bless her, we asked,
Sorry, keep mentioning him.
I know, but bless him, he didn't know, basically he didn't know what our journey entailed or what our next
we asked
steps
him,
were.
like, are there any tests or treatments that we can get on the NHS?
Exactly.
And he said, I don't know. And he went and found out, and they said, no one knows. So I'm going to write to a local clinic or something to find out, and I'll be back in touch. And it was like half a year later, so I just got on with it, ourselves, didn't we? We went privately and paid for tests that we knew we had to probably get done. That we received a random letter from the NHS, didn't even say what it was for, just saying I had an appointment on this date. And I was like, well,
oh gosh, I hope nothing's wrong.
Yeah, I don't know what this call is going to be about, but I guess I'll wait and see. And they called me like a couple of days before to say it was with the fertility doctor, and they were going to send me some forms. And they said, obviously we're going to talk about it. And then they said, oh, just ignore the bit that has all about the male partner in it. And I was like, okay. So then we got the forms. I was like, there was a whole section about the male partner. And I was like, why is this in my form? It's very easy to just print a different form or just, change the pronouns in that. Like, it was just
super
absolutely ridiculous. So we were a bit disappointed by that. You just told to just disregard half a form. And then when we had the chat with the fertility doctor, that was like the first time that our area as such had actually confirmed the 6 rounds of IUI, other than Olivia getting the freedom of information request. So effectively we could have been waiting like almost the whole year to find out that yes, it is 6 rounds of IUI, and no, we don't help you to do it, you have to self-fund, but after 6 rounds, if you need help, then yes, you can have 1 free round of IVF. However, you do need to be under 35, and I've just turned 34, so it's just going so well.
Positive vibes.
Yes, so it's been a journey, and for us, we're at the point where we had all the fertility checks and tests done, such as hormone levels, the AMH test, and internal scan of the ovaries. So that's just really to make sure to see like where your levels are at, like if you're average for your age, or kind of for us to realize that, oh, we should get on with it, or we're okay.
Yeah, I mean, we always thought Megan was going to go first. She is a year older, and that's what we always said. So we wanted to do these tests just to confirm maybe that is true. And it was. I mean, we both came back in normal range, like, thank goodness. But Megan was ever so slightly lower than mine. That just confirmed she will go first.
Yes. So everything's been checked in that sense. Also had a high cozy, which is when they check your tubes for any blockages, which most clinics do require. And again, felt like I was being treated infertile before I'd even try to get pregnant, but I do understand obviously the benefits in it, because if they find a blockage then it can be flushed out.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very beneficial, but I think it's just having the choice, because we're not at that point yet.
Yeah, exactly. I might have wanted to do 2 rounds of IUI and then be like, okay, let's have it done, because it was not a pleasant experience, let me just say, and I hope to never have to do that again. And I know it's only going to get worse for the journey anyway, but I know, really looking forward to having these artificial
COVID, which I know this has affected a lot of people as well. I mean, I had to wait in the car as well, and I had no idea, like, she was in so much pain, and it broke my heart. Yeah, it was really quite a horrible procedure, and the fact that Whitney couldn't be there made it worse. And then, you know, we were looking into doing treatment during the whole COVID time, and Whitney wanted to obviously, like, not only just be in the room with me, but she asked if she could, you know, like, help inject the syringe, you know, just so I played a part in, you know, impregnating my wife, hopefully. And she was like, well, you know, that sounds great and bless you, but no, you can't even come in the room, you have to wait in the car. So I was just like, and I mean, I know so many people have had to endure this, like, I completely get it, but at that moment it just made me feel so removed. Exactly. They're really really removing, like, we can't do we can't do it at home, we can't do it together, we can't do it together in a clinical setting. So obviously now hopefully things are a lot better with COVID, but it worked out how it's worked out. I mean, so everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer in that. And at the moment, so we have our sperm on ice in Denmark, as I like to say. We've had all of our checks, like, we are in a position, we are good to go. Megan's had just a few little health issues, and nothing's, like, serious, but we've decided we pushed it back a little bit this year. Pushed it back a few months, really. So hopefully we'll be on the journey soon. Yeah, much better, and hopefully we'll have a little baby wagon on the horizon sooner rather than later. We shall see. As we know from everyone, you know, you can have absolutely look fine fertility wise, but you have to do many rounds of IUI and potentially IVF. So we are aware. We are very aware ahead, and we'll be very pleasantly surprised if it's a quick one. So yeah, we're hoping for the best, but we know we're trying to be realistic about it as well. Yes, so please do follow along. We're on Instagram at What Wegan Did Next, and also on YouTube, where we do have vlogs of our baby journey so far. So we'll continue to document it all on there as well. And thank you so much to BPAS for being so supportive. Yes, thank you so much. And let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about. Thank you all.
Thank you, Whitney and Megan. It is quite a journey that you guys have been on so far, I have to say. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today. I'm sure it can't have been easy at certain points so far, but yeah, I think it's really great to be able to kind of share all of those challenges that you came across and what happened, so that other people can hopefully learn a bit about it if they're considering starting a family as well. I'm really happy to say we've had quite a lot of questions on the chat already. Please do keep them coming, everyone, as you think of things. So the first one is quite a general one. It's from Sophie. Hi, Sophie. And she's asking, where do you think is the best place to start with same-sex fertility planning in the UK? Marta, shall I throw that one over to you first of all?
I don't really, I mean, I don't really know where to start. I think GPs are quite challenged by that, by the sounds of it, and I've heard other stories. I think, you know, first port of call if you want to start a family should be your GP, and they should be able to help you. But beyond that, what I hear and what I've just heard from Whitney and Megan is that people need to find their own information. I think there are sources of information, for example, in charities like Fertility Network UK. I don't know if you guys have access to that. They have support groups, and they have a lot of information. There is information as well in the HFEA website that people can access, and that's also tailored to specific groups. But beyond that, I think Whitney and Megan are probably best placed than me to answer that question.
Yeah, I think, you know, as you said, there, you know, you can't really go to a GP often unless you know there is a good one. And for us, there really wasn't that much information easily accessible online, which obviously, you know, we hope that by bringing awareness that we can help change that. But for us, I guess the two main areas where we started from were, one, looking into what clinic you want to go with. Maybe it's the one that's local to you, or you want to go further afield because you feel that's the best one for you. And obviously look into whether you feel that they're going to be inclusive and their treatment towards you. Obviously BPAS Fertility sounds like it's going to be great. And then also it's thinking about, you know, if there is a known sperm donor you want to use, or if it is a sperm donor. So I think kind of one of the first things you can start doing is really looking for your sperm donor, because it isn't going to be a quick process and it will take a while. And that's kind of something you need to get sorted anyway. And then it's also getting your tests done, getting your egg levels checked and all that. And when I did speak to the NHS fertility doctor, she did say that same-sex couples, you can get the tests on the NHS, but most doctors don't know that. So what I would advise, I guess, is ringing up your GP and demanding it, really, that you should have your AMH level checked and your, what's the internal scan called? Is it called something? I mean, is it baseline?
Or baseline scan. That's
baseline scan.
Baseline scan.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where you should start, because, you know, you might find out that you're really fertile, you might find out that actually sadly you're not that fertile, and I think that kind of will guide you.
Yeah, it's a good map
forward.
Yeah, it's a good starting place, definitely. And even though there's not a lot of information online, Instagram still is kind of a good community. We have found people who have shared their stories as well. So that is a good place to look.
I would recommend the LGBT Mummies Tribe. They're really good, because they're based in the UK. They do supply a lot of information, and they do work with the NHS as well. And also a little plug, we do run the Fem Edition, which is an online publication, and we do have a family section. So there's some information on there as well. So we'll be putting lots more on there. So
definitely
that'll be good.
So lots of great resources available, thanks. So we've had a couple of questions here that I think are similar, so I'm going to pose them together if that's okay. One is, will BPAS offer reciprocal IVF? And the other is, I would like to donate my eggs to my partner so that she can get pregnant. Is that a service that will be offered at BPAS? And what do I need to know about that if we go ahead? So Marta, would you like to start by talking about what BPAS will offer?
Yes, we will offer that. It's what I mentioned before. It's called shared parenthood now. So yeah, for both questions, the answer is yes. What you need to know, I think nothing different than what you would need to know to undertake an IVF cycle. So the person that provides the eggs will have to have all those checks for ovarian reserve, and then have ovarian stimulation and the eggs collected, and your partner will have to have their endometrium prepared to have an embryo transfer in order to attempt a pregnancy. So you will need donor sperm, and as Whitney and Megan have said, that is a tricky decision and one that you should take very seriously. And then you should just embark on treatment. But yes, we will be offering it, and in my experience, that's a very beautiful thing to do, because it gets both partners involved in the process of creating a child. So I hope it answered the questions, but if not, please write back.
Whitney and Megan, did you have anything that you wanted to add about that? Is it something that you looked into?
It's something that we did consider, and you know, potentially might change our minds and do it in the future. But for now, we just decided that I guess the most straightforward way for us to go would be hopefully to get pregnant via IUI. If it doesn't look to be happening and we have to go down the IVF route, then that might be something that we consider. Also, Whitney is not 100% she wants to carry, so whether I might get pregnant with IUI and then do reciprocal IVF to carry Whitney's child, or I might never want to give birth again. So we'll see. We have our options. But
I do think it's a beautiful thing as well.
I love the idea.
I love the idea.
Really good.
It's also connected. I think it's a beautiful thing. So
I'm glad that you're going to be doing it, because I think even when we sort of mentioned it to the clinic we were looking at, they did have a kind of a weird response about it. It's a bit like you had to do it like kind of sneakily or secretly, like it wasn't like you could be obviously doing it. I don't know why. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, but it's something we're definitely like open-minded to, isn't it?
Actually, on that note, I have a question from an anonymous attendee, which says, how did the two of you decide who would get pregnant?
Well, I think I don't know, I guess for years we just sort of thought who would go first, and I think because I'm more open to the idea of being pregnant, that was always like, I'll go first and Whitney might see how it goes. And then also because I'm a year older was like another factor. And then it really did come down to where our egg levels were at, because we had no idea obviously where either of us were.
I mean, of course, if you know, Megan's were really low, I would have definitely, I would do it 100%, like no doubt about it. But I don't know, it just kind of felt right, Megan going first, and we just unanimously agreed from the get-go, didn't we, that you would be the one.
Yeah, I don't know how it would be if we both were adamant to get pregnant, like first. It'd be
I know two women who got pregnant at the same time, and they actually ended up having twins each, so they had 4 kids. I mean, that is a great way to, like,
no,
you know,
we have had that question a lot, haven't we? People been like, well, would you just get pregnant at the same time? I'm like, but why?
But our hormone levels, I mean, I don't know how that would do. So I
mean, I need someone to look after me and feed me my cravings, like, and you're gonna have the same. And be like, we both of us useless on the couch, and like, your mum having to fly in from America.
I know. But yeah, for now, Megan's gonna go first, and then
we're just gonna see how it goes. Is the way? Is the answer? Really?
Is the answer? Yeah.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. This one, I think, is and it's another anonymous attendee. I think it's probably one for you, Marta. Do you have any guidance on how long the process can take? I appreciate that it's different in every case.
So in terms of IUI, this goes with your menstrual cycle. So every cycle of IUI is 1 month, and you can decide whether you want to space them. IVF is much longer process because you need to downregulate your ovaries and then stimulate them. So from beginning to end, it can take up to 3 months. It is quite a long and quite invasive process, and it is a roller coaster for everyone. So, I mean, everyone is different, but most people will need a bit of a break after an unsuccessful cycle because of the length of it and the intensity and the involvement that you have, particularly if you're providing the eggs. So yeah, and then if you have frozen embryos after an IVF cycle, which a lot of people do, 60% of the patients we treat now end up with frozen embryos, then a frozen cycle is again very similar to a menstrual cycle. So it will take you 1 month from beginning to end to do the cycle and see whether you're pregnant or not.
And Whitney and Megan, do you have anything to add on that in terms of kind of the timeline that it's been for you so far?
Well, yeah, exactly. Just the timeline of picking out a sperm donor, finding a clinic, you know, having the test done, that is months worth effectively, before you even get to the fertility treatment. And like Marta said, like, we don't think we're going to be like bam, 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 like every month do it. And also you don't know how your body might react. And also, you know, you could have a miscarriage, for example, or chemical pregnancy in between. So you don't know what the journey is ahead. So while effectively people might think, oh, if we've got to do 6 rounds of IUI, then it's maybe just half a year, then we know that isn't going to be the case at all. So yeah, I think it really will just depend on your body and how it reacts. You know, some people, if they're doing IVF and they have polycystic ovaries, for example, they can get really overstimulated, and then they have to wait quite a few months and have, I think, their eggs frozen and whatnot before they can even go. So yeah, I think it does just depend on the situation, but it's not going to be quick, I'll just say that.
No. Fortunately not.
Thank you. So where to go next? Somebody has asked, how do I find out the requirement of our specific CCG? Megan and Whitney, you've already touched on a bit how difficult it was for you to find out your CCG's requirements. And I know from doing my, I'm just going to answer this question myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know from doing my research that a lot of the policies are available online, but they can be really, really difficult to find on the CCG website. You know, the links aren't signposted very easily. You have to do quite a lot of digging around. Sometimes the versions that are online actually are out of date and haven't been updated, so that's a problem as well. I've also had other patients email me having been told one thing by their GP, only to find out that that GP hadn't realised that the policy, for example, has been recently updated or something like that. So a woman recently emailed me and said that she'd been turned away by her GP because she's single, And it just so happened that she lives in an area where BPAS had campaigned against their policy of not providing care for single women. So I happen to know, based on where you are, that's not correct. So what I'm trying to say is it's a real minefield. But if you do speak to your GP, they should be able to find out, even if they're not sure immediately. So I would recommend that as a first choice. And freedom of information requests are possible. If you want to know how to do that, or you want help with that, you can email fertility@bpas.org and I'll be happy to answer you.
Oh, you've been so great helping us, and
yeah,
this really just highlights that the lack of information, like you say, it's quite hard to find. So yeah, I think we would like to work on that really, in order to provide something where it's easy, people can just literally go see and see what the CCG provides. So we'll be in touch about it.
Does anyone have anything to add, Marta? Okay, moving on then. Megan and Whitney, did you find that the service you received was inclusive? I think you already touched on some of the things that weren't inclusive. So I wonder whether you could kind of say a bit about what you would like to see, like what would be inclusive care from your point of view.
Inclusive care from us would, one, be seeing imagery that reflects like LGBTQ+ people or same-sex couples just online in the fertility clinics, in the brochures. That would be nice to see, so that you know that you are welcome there and you're catered for. Because it's crazy, because obviously we're all going to need help at a clinic, and the fact that we're kind of just ignored is quite mind-blowing. And being a same-sex couple, most of the time you are a bit nervous turning up these things, where you know that majority of the time it's probably is straight couples. A lot of people, have difficulties coming out, and you have to come out straight away when you go and do this. So you want to know that wherever you're going, they're going to be accepting.
Just some slides in the presentation would be nice for a start.
Yeah,
and
nice little mention, just so you feel valid and you feel accepted. I mean, just verbiage and just wording and the way things are worded can go the distance. It can go so far. And we kind of did experience a lack of that. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't intentional from their side whatsoever. It was just a lack of maybe knowing, training. They don't have the right systems. I mean, the feedback we did actually give based on that induction where we weren't catered to was actually just hold a different induction day, because it's very different what we're looking for and what single women or trans men are looking for compared to a heterosexual couple that's maybe been trying for years. And maybe it isn't right to actually lump everyone into one session. And even if you turn up and it's 3 of you, then at least you're being catered to and you're going to get the right information. So I think that would be a great way forward. And even though our clinic so far hasn't been inclusive as such, we just kind of like persevered. Other people might have just been like, okay, I'm not going to go there. But for us, we actually have had great experience with the nurses there.
Yeah, they're very nice.
I think that's helped.
Very nice.
The fact that their treatment towards us has been lovely. So
it's not a reflection on them as such. It's just the systems in place. They don't maybe have the training to implement. They don't have the imagery. Maybe they just don't know how, and they just need more.
I think it's just that they don't think about it.
Yeah, true. Probably that as well. Yeah. But it's just something they need to think more about. And just include us. We're here to stay. We're not going anywhere, are we? I mean, so it's just a missed opportunity.
It's a way for them to make money. As we all know, the costs are crazy. So
it's just a gap in the market as well. I mean, hello, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like some of the things just hadn't really been properly thought through in terms of like some of the marketing that you received and stuff. So yeah, it's great to hear you kind of describe what a more inclusive service would be like. We've had this is more of a comment really, but I think it's worth reading out. Brilliant mention of gamete storage pre-transitioning for transgender and non-binary people. Marta, I think this was submitted during your talk. I work in a gender clinic in the UK, and this is definitely something that's mentioned prior to someone starting hormones. Marta, did you want to add anything on fertility preservation for trans people?
Well, just to remind everyone that that's available, and I think in a lot of cases it's funded by the NHS, the fertility preservation stage, and it's something that we're seeing more and more in fertility clinics, and it's beautiful to even see that people are coming back to use those gametes and to have children. So I think definitely if it's funded by the NHS, people should use that before they transition, because it's I mean, particularly for men who transition into women, it's not invasive and it's a good sort of backup plan for the future. for people who transition in the other direction, it's a bit more invasive because they need to have ovarian stimulation and have scans and have an egg collection, and often it's challenging to have vaginal scans in those circumstances. But I still think it's something that should be discussed and recommended as a backup plan for future, because even if at the time of transitioning you think you might never want to have children, it's worth having that option perhaps for later on. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks Marta. Another one's just come in from an anonymous attendee. Our fertility clinic charged us extra fees, like unexplained fees to do reciprocal IVF and for tests we knew weren't needed, counselling, etc. What are our options for challenging these?
I mean, for our answer would be, I have absolutely no idea. That's really unfortunate. We have found out from our followers that every single clinic charges different fees, almost has different requirements for different things. And so, yeah, you might look at a clinic and maybe their cost of IUI might be slightly less than another one, but then they might add in other tests that other ones don't do. So I'm not sure on the answer as to whether you can really challenge it, because if that's all that clinic wants to do, I don't know, but hopefully Marta or Olivia might know.
Well, if I can add to that, I think at the moment there isn't much people can do to challenge extra tests that might not be needed, but there is some new guidance and regulations that will allow people to challenge, and those are published by the CMA, that stipulate that fertility patients should be treated as consumers and that providers should follow consumer law. And in those circumstances, we can be challenged as providers if we're not transparent with costs from the beginning and give patients a proper price structure so that patients can manage their expectations. And it's not just about the financial sort of cost of the treatment, so having a clear idea of how much money you're going to spend, but also about the tests and the additional things that people might throw into you. So I think it will soon be possible to challenge that, but I'm not sure whether that is an option right now. Olivia might want to add into that.
No, I think that the CMA guidance is going to be really helpful from this point of view, because they do specify in that guidance that everything that you might be expected to pay as an additional cost needs to be set out from the beginning, and also the circumstances in which you will need to pay that. So hopefully going forward, it will be much clearer for patients sort of from the off what they might be expected to spend. I know from having spoken to quite a lot of patients that sometimes things are sprung on people at quite short notice, and they need to kind of make these financial commitments for certain tests or extra procedures that they weren't necessarily expecting, and it can be quite daunting having to make that decision in a short space of time. So we're really hopeful that this is going to improve things.
If I can add, in the meantime, if people are embarking in treatment, I would encourage everyone to challenge every single test and procedure that they are offered and encouraged to take. Because fertility treatment providers, we have the responsibility to explain the reasons why we're offering or doing certain tests. And I think people, as patients, we often, when we go to the doctor, we feel quite threatened, there's an imbalance in power there. But I think people should be empowered to challenge those tests and challenge those procedures and ask for the evidence behind it. Because often there isn't enough evidence to do the things that people are doing, and patients are being charged a lot of money to do those things. So, empower people to challenge. I think it's a good way to start.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I don't know why this kind of connects to it, doesn't really. I just remembered with the high COSI test that I think I had no choice but to do it. Maybe I think I just looked into it and it was like, well, most clinics require you to do it, and they just said it was the next stage in order to move forward. I felt like, well, I had to do that in order to, but okay, I'm ready to do the test. But there was one little thing with it that was quite strange, because I think they maybe do it around ovulation time or some specific period I had to wait for and things like that. And when I was really Googling it, it was to do with the fact that to make sure that I'm not pregnant. I was like,
There's no
and
way.
I'm not pregnant. Like, so I felt like, why do I have to wait for this certain time period? Again, that wasn't anything that was mentioned to me or catered to. Like, I didn't have to at all, because there's no risk. No
risk at all.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so next question. This is from an anonymous person. My GP said that we can't get NHS IVF, and we also can't afford private treatment. We've been considering trying insemination at home. I know that we can't get sperm shipped to us, and I don't really know where to start. Do you have any advice?
That is really, really tricky. That is exactly why we have launched our petition, because it puts people in this situation where they feel like they, you know, sadly can't create a family or even where to begin. But I would just say that, you know, really hopeful for the BPAS Fertility Clinic coming out, and the, you know, at cost. That should really hopefully help a lot of people. I don't know what the costs are yet, but that would definitely, I think, be an option, hopefully. But as we know, if you're using sperm from the sperm bank, then you have to pay a lot of money for that. And then if you use a known donor, then you know, potentially putting yourself at risk or your future child at risk. So yeah, it's a really tricky situation, and I don't really have the best answer for that one, sorry.
I don't either, unfortunately. It just kind of highlights how broken the system is, essentially. And yeah, I'm so sorry as well. But I'm hopeful, though, that with enough voices amplified, I'm hopeful that change will be made and no one will be put in this situation again.
Marta, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I just completely agree. It is a very, very difficult situation to be in, and unfortunately one that affects many people. And you know, until things changed, you know, we, you know, campaigning and trying to get our service to help people that are struggling in that way is what we can do. I'm really sorry, really sorry.
Yeah, this is exactly the impact that it has on people, doesn't it? Having to pay for all of this stuff and then not being eligible for NHS care.
No.
Okay, we've got 2 questions left. This one says, thank you so much, Whitney and Megan, for telling us your story. In your experience, was it more expensive to get donor sperm from abroad than in the UK?
That's a good question. Actually, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I think when we looked at it, I think the costs were kind of similar.
Yeah, we paid in euros as well. So I know the conversion rate isn't that great to the pound to the euro, but it was a little less in that respect.
Yeah, I think looking at European versus American sperm banks, it looked to be quite similar, but I don't know what English sperm banks or British, whatever, charge. So that would be interesting. I don't know if anyone else knows the answer to that one.
I haven't looked for a while, so I don't have precise information. I think it's probably quite similar. I think there are sperm banks that are based abroad that are also recruiting donors in here, so I imagine their prices are similar. But also, if you're buying it from outside of the UK, you have to pay the transporting costs, and I don't know how much that is, but it might be quite significant.
Yeah, I think when they ship it, it's about £270 maybe. It comes in the little, you know, nitrogen whatever canister, and obviously it depends, I guess, if you're shipping all of your vials over at once to the clinic for them to keep their frozen, then that's a one-off cost. But
there is storage fees as well, and I think
you might want to keep the storage fees, because, you know, for example, if you do actually keep some of the vials with the sperm bank and don't send it all over and don't use all the vials, then you can actually get I think 75% off. That's the case for Cryos International anyway. But I presume if we shipped it over to the clinic, then we couldn't just be like, oh, return it. Like, I don't think that works that way.
It's cross the border.
So yeah, there's always extra costs to it for sure. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, but if you have it in storage here, then you have to pay the storage fee every year. Yeah.
So I guess when you're having it stored, there's still going to be a fee, isn't there?
So I guess it's just the transport
and
fee.
I don't know what it's like in clinics here, but for like a sperm bank, when you're purchasing it, they'll give you, you know, whether you want to store it for like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and it's kind of like more cost effective, I think, you know, if you kind of like do multiple years at a time. So I think we did 4.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah,
which is good, because I think they've already been there nearly a year.
I mean, yeah, a year's gone by so fast.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we've done that. But it's good to have that option though as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the last question that I've got here is actually specifically for you, Whitney. It's given that you're American, do you have friends in the States that are going through a similar process? And how do you think that the experience in the UK compares, if so?
Oh, goodness. I have friends online that have gone through a similar.
Yeah, we don't know anyone personally doing it.
I don't know anyone like personally who's gone through it yet, but we do have some friends online, and it's really different in the US, the way like insurance companies, the whole US healthcare system in general is a bit different. So yeah, I mean, I know some people have had to pay a lot of money as well, from cryobanks in the US. And then depending on what their insurance will cover, if anything, it can be different circumstances. And also, you go on the birth certificate as parent 1 and parent,
like each state has different rules.
Like the partner may have to like adopt the child as well, because you're not automatically like parent 1 and parent 2 like you are in the UK. So yeah, I think it's very different, but I think there's a lot of things that we can relate to, and a lot of challenges that are definitely still in place.
I think either you can be covered by insurance, which is great,
or you can
and if it's not, I think their fees are like crazy.
Yeah, I think there's a huge markup. So yeah, I think just in the US it's just going to be dependent on different circumstances, insurance companies, this, that, and the other, and it depends on which insurance company you have. There's several in the States, and how generous they are or not.
And what we did find interesting, actually, we did look into American sperm banks, and there were a few sperm donors that we did like the look of, but what was strange is they all seem to have some kind of defect in their medical history. It might be like a very rare thing they might carry, or something that's like very rare to pass on. But we did find that quite strange, because in all the ones we looked for in Europe, for example, like they're fine, absolutely fine. So I don't know if it's a bit stricter in the EU and the UK, but wherever you get your sperm from, they still need to adhere to the guidelines in the UK, which is the amount of families that the sperm donor can go to, which is 10.
Yes.
I think that's all there is it? Or is there other information they have to do? Oh, and they have to be known.
Yeah, I was going to say, yes.
But one of the good things about the States is you can do home insemination from a sperm bank, which is fascinating. Actually, our sperm bank in the US, Cryo's US, we've known people who've had their sperm shipped to their house, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that must be nice.
Yeah.
Because we just don't have that option. So that is one thing the States is doing well, I would say, in that respect. Yeah.
Lots to think about. Well, Whitney and Megan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been fascinating to hear so much about your experience so far, and I really wish you all the luck in the world for the rest of your fertility journey. I'm sure we'll be in touch along the way, but it's been brilliant to hear from you tonight, so thanks so much. And Marta, thank you for your presentation as well, and thank you everybody who's come along and asked questions. It's been really, really great to hear all of your queries, and thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.